Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. Now today we're going to be taking a look at the 1996 Trendmasters figures produced for the movie Independence Day. Trendmasters were one of those companies at the time that were producing a lot of movie related toys. They did Independence Day, they did Mars Attacks, Godzilla, Lost in Space and a few others like the sort of Battlestar Galactica comic spin-offs. And I have to say they are a sort of toy line that I do quite like. I've always liked Trendmasters figures. They have a certain charm to them. They're not always the best figures, but they certainly have quite a lot of play value to them. So in this video I'm going to be looking at a large selection of the figures produced by Trendmasters for Independence Day. They produced 3 human characters and then a whole swathe of the aliens in their sort of exoskeletons. So let's start off with looking at the human characters. And here are the 3 human characters that Trendmasters produced based on the characters in the movie. So we have on the right we have Captain Stephen Hiller, who was played by Will Smith. In the middle we have President Thomas J. Whitmore, who was played by Bill Pullman. And on the left we have David Leviton, who was played by Jeff Goldblum. Now these figures are actually sort of fairly chunky. They're about 6 inches tall and have a good sort of weight to them, and they all come with quite a lot of accessories. Some of them, the accessories work quite nicely, and other ones are a little bit rubbish, but they're all sort of loosely based on things you would have seen in the film. So let's start with Captain Stephen Hiller. So this is supposed to be Will Smith. Now you can see here that he has a lot of weapons. I've just knocked the gun off his side. You can see he's comes with a little pistol which does actually clip onto the side of his leg there. He comes with a machine gun which also has a missile launcher attached. Now the missiles do fire. They fire pretty well actually. If we could just, I'll fire this at the back wall and we'll see how far it sort of pings. Oh, actually a bit lackluster that one. When I did it earlier I'm sure it fired a bit faster. We'll try that one again. Oh yeah, that fired a lot better and is now somewhere across my room. So you can see that does fire quite well. He also comes with a flight helmet. If we remove that and look underneath, now you get to see the face. So does this look like Will Smith? Not particularly. It's a sort of fairly generic looking character with sort of an army buzz cut type haircut and a little bit of stubble in the moustache. I have to say I don't think that particularly looks like Will Smith, but you know, it's a good go, I suppose. He also has some body armour and another machine gun that clips into the back of his backpack. Now the body armour on these is actually pretty rubbish because it doesn't really want to hold in place. It's got a fairly strange sort of latch system that sort of clips on at the shoulders, and then there is a peg in the back of the backpack which sits into a hole on his back. It's a little bit awkward to get to sort of work, and on some of the characters works incredibly badly. This one you can see you just sort of have to bend it together. There's some tiny little pegs in the top which fit into these holes, and it sort of clips in place but not really. So I'd have thought most of the time a child would play with this with the armour off, just because it keeps sort of falling off. But the guns do fit nicely in the hands. You can see here I can clip that in. If I should be able to clip that in. As with all of these things, they do fit in but a little bit fiddly. So you can see the gun holds in the hand there. Also the machine gun will hold in this hand here. So you've got quite a lot of sort of different combinations of weapons you can do. Just a little bit fiddly on the sort of backpack and armour there. President Thomas J. Whitmore here in the middle comes with a similar sort of setup. He's got a backpack, but this time he has a missile launcher that's attached to the backpack, so you can sort of rotate that up and down. But again, as you can see, because of the way this is constructed, the backpack does tend to sort of ping off. It's a little bit of a sort of poor bit of design there, I would say, on that figure, but you know, it does work okay. And if we take off the helmet there, you can have a look at his face. Now I think this face does look a little bit more like Bill Pullman, so that one certainly they've done a better job on the sculpt. Again, he comes with a machine gun and also another tiny little pistol which just clip onto the side of his leg there or goes into his hand. The sculpts on these figures I think generally are actually pretty good. If we take off all of his armour, so you can see underneath, he's got a flight suit on. And there's quite a lot of detail going on there. It's certainly, you know, got some nice bits of sculpting on. As you can see, there are actually some little stickers here where they've put emblems onto the character. So we've got a little badge on the side and a flag on the chest. These probably should have been done as printed on decals, I would say, because they're starting to sort of come loose a bit. But you know, it's a nice little bit of detail there. And the figures themselves actually have quite a lot of weight to them. They've got a sort of a sturdy feeling, and they feel pretty sort of robust. There's a fair amount of articulation to them. You can see you can rotate the heads, you can rotate the arms. The right hand wrist that rotates at the hand there, and on the left hand side you can see that his arm actually rotates at the elbow. You can just sort of rotate that round. So fairly minimal articulation, but enough that you can actually sort of pose them, and they do feel pretty sturdy, as I say, so something that's quite nice to sort of play with. And then we can finally move on to David Levison, the Jeff Goldblum figure. Now this guy comes with quite a strange set of accessories, slightly different to the other ones. He has a grappling hook rather than a missile launcher, which fires much the same. He has a portable shield, as you can see there, which is sort of reminiscent of things you might have seen in the movie. It's not something you actually see, but it sort of works. He's got a little computer terminal there, which is on a rotating little arm that's attached to his backpack, and then he's also got a headset there with some goggles and a little microphone, so you can actually take that off and sort of rotate it out of the way, just see his face. And as you can see there, that is the face of Jeff Goldblum, or what the toy makers think the face of Jeff Goldblum looks like. Again, it's not actually a great sculpt on that one. Looks sort of like him, but not really. I would say it's about as poor quality as the Will Smith one over there on the right. It does a job, but it doesn't really look like him. And again, the armour is held on with these strange little clips. You can see here this one doesn't clip at all together. It's almost impossible to get these to clip on properly. So with any sort of minor play, this armour just falls off. And then you can see the sculpt underneath, which on this, again, it's a bit of a plain shirt, but then the character in the movie didn't really do much. So he's got jeans and a shirt on. Not the most exciting of characters. I guess that's why they gave him all of these extra weapons and things like a portable shield, just to make him look a little bit exciting. These figures came on fairly nondescript card backs. You can see here, this is one of the card backs. It just has the Independence Day logo at the top, says ID4, and then not a great deal of detail on the front. And if we turn it over, you can see there's just a standard sort of picture of all the other toys on the backing. This is what every single card had. There's not a great deal of detail with them. There's a tiny little write-up of each character and sort of what they come with, and it shows you most of the exoskeletons, but not all of them. And then on the front of the card we had these sort of little bits of card which gave you the name and lists what sort of weapons they come with, so that's the important bit of information there. And each of these figures also came with a mission disc. Now this was something that Trendmasters have been trying on a couple of their toy lines, because they did this on Mars Attacks as well, and this was a computer disc that contained a game that you could install onto your Windows PC, and each figure came with a different number disc. You can see here I have quite a few of them. I think there were 11 to collect in total, and the games on them were fairly simple sort of games, nothing that exciting. They were fairly simple sort of puzzle type things, and occasionally something where you had to do a little bit of shooting, but they certainly weren't that amazing for the time. But as a freebie or something that came with these toys, it gave you something else to do, and we'll take a look at a couple of these later on in this video. As a set of 3 figures, I actually think these don't look too bad considering the era they were made in. A lot of toys made in the 90s were really super muscle bound, had very strange proportions and very strange poses, and really these don't have too much of that going on. They are a little bit on the muscly side, a little bit bulky, but they're certainly in fairly normal poses and things that you could sort of put on display without them looking odd. A lot of the figures at the time were posed in really sort of wide stances, or their hands in strange positions, so apart from having them with the weapons that were provided, they would look a little bit odd. But as you can see, even with minimal weapons on, these actually look fairly reasonable, and they're actually pretty straightforward to get if you want to collect them. These turn up on eBay all the time, and even carded, they're not that expensive. I picked this up as a whole sort of bulk lot, and I think I paid about £5 a figure with all the weapons, so certainly something that's worth looking into if you like Independence Day and like to sort of collect all of the figures. But let's move on now to the alien figures, because they are by far the most exciting part of the movie and the most exciting part of the toy line. The figures that everybody really wanted from this line are of course the aliens with their exoskeletons, because this is the main thing that you see in the movie that just looks really cool. And Trendmasters produced 6 of these figures. As you can see in front of me, I actually only have 4 of them. There are 2 I've still not been able to find just at the moment, but really they are all the same figure, they just have slightly different paint jobs. So we have the one in the front here in this sort of aqua colour. This is the science officer. In the back there is a darker blue one, which is the shock trooper. In the middle there is the beige one, which is the attack pilot. On the left there is a limited edition one, which is the ultimate commander, and this comes in a sort of silver colour. And then the 2 I'm missing, there is a red one which is called the weapons expert, and then there is a grey version which is the zero gravity version. But as I say, essentially they are all the same figure, and they are pretty nice actually. They're quite tall. They're about sort of 8 to 10 inches tall depending on how you have the tentacle set, and they do have some quite nice features. So let's take a closer look at this one, which is the science officer. Now as you can see, there's a nice lot of detail on the figure. The sculpting is really nice. They have a fairly limited articulation on the front, but that's mainly because they have all of these tentacles on the back. You can rotate the arms up and down like this. You can also rotate the legs, and these sort of bend out as you rotate them. And then there is also a waist sort of pivot point there, and you can rotate that waist around. But the main sort of feature on these is the head and the tentacles. The head on the back, you can see there are two little sort of clips here, and if you clip those open, you can see it opens to reveal the alien inside it, and I'll show you a bit more of that later. And then on the back we have 8 tentacles. Now 6 of these tentacles are rubber with wire inside, so you can bend and pose them as you want. You can see I can bend this all around and put it in all different shapes, and that actually makes for some quite good play value, because in the movie there's one point when one of these alien exoskeletons attacks the scientist and wraps his tentacle around the neck of that, and so you can easily recreate that with these because they're so pliable. And then there are 2 other tentacles which you can see here, and these are made out of a solid plastic because that is what helps stand this figure up. You can see that these 2 tentacles here help this figure stand. Without those it does fall over, and these are removable, so you can see I can take one of those out. The actual toy came with a tiny little instruction sheet, as you can see here, and it describes how you can place the tentacles and how you replace those plastic ones. You quite often see these figures actually with the tentacles missing, because over the years the glue on them has started to perish, and you are sort of able to pull these tentacles out, and they do fall out quite easily. So if you're trying to collect these loose, make sure it has 2 solid plastic tentacles and 6 other sort of rubbery ones with metal inside, because that's the amount it needs to have. Now, as I said, these exoskeletons also came with a little version of the alien which fits inside the head, so I will show you one of the little aliens. And again, these are rubberized aliens with wire inside them, so you can pose them very nicely into all sorts of shapes. Fairly simple in their sort of construction, but it's quite a nice thing. And these are made of a sort of translucent rubber which has a little bit of paint applied to it, just enough to sort of bring out some of the details in the face. And you can then pose these and squidge them about until they fit inside the head. When these toys were packaged, you could actually open the head in the package, and inside it was a paper sort of card version of the little alien. So if I open this one, you can see there is a little cardboard version of the alien, and the rubberized alien was packaged next to it. So when you got this as a toy, obviously the first thing you did was pull out the little cardboard piece like so and put the alien inside the head. But it's not as easy as you would think, because although it looks like there's a lot of space in there, actually there isn't. So when you put the alien inside the head of these exoskeletons, you really have to squidge him up into a little sort of position, a little bit like that, and then there is just about enough space that he will fit in there, and you can shut the head around him. But it's a really tight fit. I think they sort of oversized the alien to make it have a little bit of play value, which means that it doesn't quite fit inside the alien exoskeletons there. When you initially look at these figures, they do look essentially all the same, just with different paint jobs, but there are sort of a couple of subtle differences. If we look here, this is the science officer, and then this one here is the shock trooper, and you can see here there's a sort of detailing on the left shoulder. I'm not really sure what that's supposed to be. It looks a little bit like a laser, but as you can see, that science officer there has one type, and if we look at the shock trooper, this one has a slightly different shoulder piece. It's more sort of bulbous, and this is the one that I've seen on most of the figures. It could be that that's only on this one. As I don't have the other 2, it may be that that is the one that's used on those, but the other 3 figures I have here all have this sort of bulbous shoulder. So that's the sort of main difference, and I think some of these rear sort of tentacles are also shaped slightly differently, because they certainly all stand slightly differently, and some of them are sort of slightly more bent and sort of bowed. It could be that this is bowed over the years, but the plastic used on these is actually pretty firm, so I think they might just be sort of different constructions. The Ultimate Commander version of the exoskeleton and alien was released as a limited edition sort of special. I'm not quite sure how many sort of numbers they class as a limited edition, because he's still actually pretty easy to find. The only difference on the packaging is it has a sticker that says limited edition, and as you can see, it is the same thing. It just has a silver paint job to it with a few little bits of sort of dark paint put over the top to add a few extra details, but otherwise it is the same figure. And the aliens that come inside also have a slightly different paint job. This is the sort of ones that come with all of the other figures. You can see that's the sort of standard paint job, and this is the one that comes with the Ultimate Commander. It's got a little bit more detailing to it and slightly darker colours, so it stands out to be just a bit different from the others, but the actual sculpt and everything is exactly the same as the sort of standard Alien figures. When the movie came out, I actually only bought one figure from the toy line, and it was this one, which is the Shock Trooper. I just like the colouring that this figure had. It's got some sort of nice sort of iridescent little sparkles on it and a little bit of an aqua wash over this dark blue figure, and it's really nothing special compared to the other ones, but it was just the colouring that did it for me. As you can see on this one, I did mention earlier that some of the tentacles do come loose over the years, and this one actually has a few of them that are loose, so this is easily detached, and you can see how sort of bendy and wiry the inside of it is. I'm going to reattach this later on. Just a little bit of super glue dropped on the end of that should hold that back in place, but even without that it does sort of hold reasonably well. Now these figures, much like the human ones, are still pretty easy to come by. Not that many people seem to collect them, so they turn up on eBay all the time. Loose ones fairly cheaply, and box ones even, you know, on cards, sort of 10 to 15 pounds is what I would expect to pay them, and they're just really not that collectible. But I can see them becoming more collectible as time goes by. These movies are now just slightly over 20 years old. I think about 23 years old. Give it another 10 years and the kids that had these when the movie came out will be wanting to collect them again, so I can see these being another sort of collectible in another 5 years, so certainly worth picking up if you see them cheaply. We're going to take one final look at the Attacker pilot, because this one also has a very nice paint job to it. It's got a sort of beige undertone with some little black highlights, but what they've done is also sprayed a sort of silver topping to it, so it has a real nice sheen to it. You can see if I move that in the light, it sort of sparkles, and when you open the head of the exoskeleton, inside has been painted a really nice sort of vibrant blue. It just sort of makes it stand out from the others, which all have a very uniform colouring to them. This one, the fact the inside of the head is blue, just makes it stand out a little bit more. I think this is now probably my favourite. As I say, when I first bought them, it was that one that I bought, the dark blue one, but actually the paint scheme on this one, when you see it in hand, it just looks so nice. I really think it's much better than the other ones. I do like that blue internal part there of the head. As with the human figures, these Alien exoskeletons also came with a mission disc, and I've now played most of these, and I have to say, even at the time I thought they were pretty rubbish, and now looking back they do seem to be really quite boring games. It's a lot of sort of just random clicking on things just to see what happens, because there's no real instructions. It's just a sort of bit of guesswork trying to decipher some alien wording and sort of terms and things just to get things to work. So they're not that amazing, but we're going to have a look at a couple of them anyway, just so you can see what sort of graphics and what sort of things went on back on these mission discs. So that's it for my review of the Trendmasters Independence Day figures. They are a nice set to collect, and at the moment they are pretty easy to find and come by, and there's only a few of them, so really it's not that large a collection to sort of hunt down and search for. The only problem with them is that they are pretty big, so putting them on display you need a very big shelf, even just to put a small selection like this of them on display, but they do look pretty good. And so I would say if you like the movie, I would hunt down these figures. They're certainly worth adding to any collection. Trendmasters did produce some other toys for the movie, and I've done some reviews of some of the bits that I have in my collection. There is one much larger version of the Alien exoskeleton and a couple of vehicles. Everything from Trendmasters tends to be at different scales, so these all work together, but the ships won't fit these figures, and the sort of play sets and stuff are much too small for these to be played with. So like a lot of their toys, these are just to be played with on their own, and you have to make up the rest of it. Trendmasters did that a lot with their toys, things being in very different scales, so nothing would sort of fit together. But really that doesn't matter, because I think these are actually a very nice set of figures. So I hope my review of the Independence Day Trendmasters figures has been of interest to you, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
So just time to do a quick repair on this just before I put these toys back on my display here. I've got a tiny bit of super glue left in this bottle. I'm going to just squeeze a small amount onto the end of this. Doesn't need to be a great deal because it will sort of move about inside the little hole on the back. And I'm going to push that in like so. Give that a few minutes to set and then that should be fine. I don't think that will cause me any more problems.